Journalistic impact. It's fun. I don't know what you're talking about. So this story is about the Macalinao brothers, prominent developers in the Solana space who were revealed not long ago to have something like 11 or 12 assumed identities who are also doing projects on Solana in what sure looked like a scheme to boost the appearance of activity in the Solana DeFi ecosystem. So they had a VC firm. It looks like the VC firm has severed ties with Ian and Dylan. That is the news that was shared yesterday on the heels of this big report from Danny Nelson and Tracy Wong just some weeks ago. So the big question here is anonymity versus deception versus whatever. Reputation is still a foundation of the crypto economy. And when you run afoul of some people, repercussions happen. And I think that's what's happening here. And I think there are some interesting conversations around sort of the state of anonymity and whether or not anonymous teams can be trusted. So I'm going to throw this to Will for his initial thoughts on an update to a pretty big story from a while back.
Huge update. I mean, these are the bros who raised 4.5 or half of the $4.5 billion that was in the DeFi ecosystem by fake pumping it, right? Like they enabled this whole system to develop that was previously not there, just by understanding that you could put tokens into one system and then stack more tokens on top of that, and then stack more tokens on top of that. And before you have it, got like a whole little eco DeFi system that's really not true at all. Shout out to Danny Nelson, shout out to Tracy Wang for figuring this out, because it is really important for all these ecosystems to have accountability. Zach, I think you nailed it. Like the anonymity aspect of this is really important, right? Like when do you call out these people and how do you do it? In this instance, it makes sense, right? They have a $100 million fund. That is a lot of capital. That's a lot more money than we all have. They were going to deploy that into a lot of projects, and they had a pretty shady history of interacting with projects, right? 11, 12 plus identities that we know of, used to deceive people to actively build out their ecosystem. How many tokens do they launch? Where are those tokens now? Who bought those tokens? Are those people wrecked because of the behavior of these two? And yet they were supposed to be entrusted with this VC firm. I'm also interested to know about the VC firm itself. Like, were they asked to leave? Did they leave voluntarily? Did they just resign and walk away? Doesn't really seem to be a lot of details on that. We might not ever see those details. At the very least, I think I am glad that they stepped aside, because it's not good for the entire ecosystem to have these two characters involved. Jen, to you.
Yeah, when it comes to pseudonymity, I think as we move forward, as there's more mainstream adoption, we're going to see less and less trust around these anonymous and pseudonymous figures, unless they've been able to build a reputation for that pseudonymous name, right? So when I read this story, I thought about Do Kwon. When this whole Terra Luna thing exploded, we found out that Do Kwon had a pseudonym, had launched an algorithmic stablecoin. It had failed. We've spoke about it on the show. And, if people would have known that, if that was disclosed, maybe they would have treated this project and treated Do Kwon a little bit differently. And so I think as we move forward and we think about trust in the system and that transparency that we advocate for, the pseudonymity, I don't know if it's gonna, if people will be able to act in these pseudonymous roles as much as they were able to before. But Will, I think, did your hand go up or was that Zach? It's hard in the box. You're right. Okay.
I know, the box is limiting. I'll add one more thought and then hand it off to Zach. I think you're totally spot on there, right? Like, you do have this claim to pseudonymity if you want to be in the shadows and operate there. But if you are going to start malpracticing and hurting people, I think then there's a good chance that someone's going to start to figure out who you are and identify who you are. There's some really good actors out there who are pseudonymous. Banteg is one that just comes to mind. First of all, he's like in the, blanking on the top of my head, DeFi community writ large. And he's been a good actor for like 2 years now, and no one's really had an interest in like revealing who he is. Then you have these other characters who are shady, and people are going to try to figure out who you are. The ethics of it are really tough, and CoinDesk has written a ton on this subject since being pseudonymous is such a part of being in Bitcoin. It's really hard to know like when to reveal somebody or not to reveal somebody. In this instance, I think it fell on the correct side, because they were obviously scamming people, hurting people, and even raising money just to benefit themselves. Zach, to you.
A lot of interesting conversations around pseudonymity in a system that is pseudonymous by design. But when it comes down to it, deception is usually a bad way to go. And I think probably what's happening here is just a recognition that, hey, pseudonymity is one thing, deception is another, and business relationships can and probably should be terminated over what is thought to be deceptive practices. And I think that's probably what we're seeing here on the heels of, again, this big scoop from CoinDesk.